Welcome back to part 2 of our episode with pediatric acupuncturist Robin Ray Green, author of Heal Your Child from the Inside Out. Last week we talked about non-needle techniques you can use to help heal your children from a wide variety of health issues, including digestive disorders and food intolerances. This week we look at an expanded definition of the 5-element theory and how it can be applied to home and work life. Plus, we'll answer questions from our audience coming up next on the Nutrition Heretic podcast.
Meet Gina. Gina wanted to lose weight, so she spent 2 years fasting, detoxing, and dabbling with vegan diets while practicing a shit ton of yoga to lose 25 pounds. But it took so long that nobody noticed. Then, Gina started Frenching her food by eating fatty cheeses, butter, sausages, and red meat, and lost 15 more pounds in only 2 months. Everybody noticed this time. Frenching your food unlocks the riddle of weight loss that skinny French chicks use to slim down, look young, and live longer despite doing everything wrong. Be like Gina. Start Frenching your food today by visiting nutritionheretic.com/Frenching.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
So back to my question about the localized eczema, let's say. Would you say that, like if it is telling us as an adult, let's say it's telling us to rub that spot, scratch over here because that's going to correspond to, your triple warmer or whatever. I guess where I'm going with this is that our instinct, again, believing that the body's stupid and it's trying to kill you, is let's stop the itching.
Right. Right.
What's the, and I know that, this is what, this is what you do for a livelihood, but, what can people, I guess, glean from that as far as like maybe paying attention? Like, oh, okay, I got this, this weird rash that's just on my temples. Maybe I should rub it. Maybe I shouldn't rub it. Is there anything that they should, consider?
Well, I think that, because we have 12 meridians and 24 different organ systems, it'd be a little too much to go into in the podcast here as far as like location and whatnot. But I would say, if you are having eczema, it's really important to look at what's going on in your life and your diet right now. Are you getting enough nutrients from your diet? Are you getting enough oils? Could be, you need fish oil or borage oil or, things to nurture and nourish the skin. Are you hydrated enough? Are you detoxifying properly? So I think those are sort of the things that I start to ask myself as I'm working with a client is like, what's too much? Like, is there too much of something in the diet or in the lifestyle? Too much work, too much stress, too much processed food? Is there something that's not enough rest, not enough, time to nurture yourself and come back into balance, not enough, oils and good healthy fats in the diet. So that's usually where I'll go is what is too much and what is not enough. And then how can we balance that out? And a lot of times that will go away. And then, it's good just to let it be. When we suppress the symptoms, when we put on cortisone cream and things, we're just driving it deeper in the body.
Exactly.
And we don't want to do that. So it's really important to, we want to manage symptoms. That's something, if it's really bothering you where you scratch it at night and you're bleeding, we don't want it to get to the point where it's like infected or,
Right.
Anything like that. So sometimes we do have to manage the symptoms a little bit while we're working on some of this deeper level stuff, but we do want to like let it be. And, maybe do something topically, naturally to try and help it out if we can. And then, if you really need to go to the steroids, we can do that. But I find that if we let it be, it'll tell us if what we're doing is working or not.
Right. Okay, great. On your page, you talk about the 5-element theory and using that not only for the digestive troubles, but also creating harmonious lifestyle, home, work environment, etc.
Yes.
How, you talked about the elements, the earth, water, wind, fire, etc. How does that apply outside of, let's say, the corresponding organs to those elements? Right. In other words, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. So I talk about it, I call it the 5-element way. And really what that means to me is that the 5 elements are this system of correspondences, and we can use it to help us understand our health and any imbalances that we've got going on. We can use it to understand, our emotional and spiritual health as well, because each element balances one another and nourishes one another, and each element also provides counterbalance. So for instance, the fire element is all about fun and spontaneity and creativity and play and love and all of that. But if we spent all of our time in the fire element, partying and having fun and going to the beach, then our other elements would not be nourished, and we wouldn't take time to, actually have a plan and meet our goals, or, be organized, or have quiet time and have time for mindfulness and rest and just doing nothing and so on. And so if we just focus on one element, we can become out of balance. And to give you an example, in the process of writing my book, I was working in my clinic full time and teaching and going through all of that. And I got into what I call wood mode, which is wood is all about drive and action and taking, all of that. And I just got and this is very common, especially where I live in Silicon Valley, where people are just in wood mode. It's like, we got to do stuff. We got to get it done, check it off the list. And we're always busy, busy, busy. And when you get into that mode, you neglect your other elements. You stop taking time for quiet, for just lazy days and doing nothing, and, mindfulness and being present in the moment. And there was no time for fun. I was so busy working all the time. There's no time for fun and play, or I was having some, but just not enough, not enough fun in my life. And then, I was still doing pretty good with my earth and, eating well and being organized and all of that. But eventually it reached a point last year where I just was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't do any more. I just can't. And I took a 6-week pause from, I still had my clinic schedule, but I took a 6-week pause from everything. I call it my sacred pause, where I just had to stop. I had to say no. I had to, just not do anything. And that 6 weeks was so essential for me to come back to myself and to find the joy in my work again and look forward to all of the things that I had going on. Because, when we get out of balance, it's really easy just to get stuck there and just to, not be able to know, kind of know what we need to do, but maybe feel guilty about it. And, I was able to really nurture my water element, which was quiet and solitude and rest and, lying flat in those lazy days. Like, I so needed that to repair and come back into balance, and giving yourself that space without feeling guilty about it, because we know that that's what we need. And then all the elements just like really started to come back into balance. I could plan a day. I could, I was having fun and doing fun things and enjoying eating and connecting with my family at dinner time, and, staying on track with what I feel like is my life's work and life's calling. And so I love to bring that out to people and out to my patients, because I feel like our lives are going to always have something go on. You have some left turn. You had no idea that this was going to happen, or somebody, would lose their job or die, or, the kids grow off to college or whatever it might be. And we have to continually reassess, like, where are my elements at? Because when they're all in balance, we feel happy and healthy and things are easeful and it just flows. And I don't know anybody that doesn't want more of that in their life.
Right. So then, can you run down then for me what those 5 elements in our life are? So you said wood was your drive.
Yes.
Earth is your stomach.
Right. So wood element gives us our drive. It helps us create step-by-step plans and take inspired action toward our goals. And then we have the fire element, which is really all about epic self-care and self-love. And it inspires fun and play and creativity and spontaneity. Mm-hmm. And then the earth element teaches us to connect with nature and our friends and family and food. It's all about keeping the peace and keeping ourselves balanced. And then the metal element teaches us to set healthy boundaries, to find our life's purpose, and to live authentically. And then, isn't that good? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And then the water.
So that's the one that says no.
Right, exactly. That's the one that's like,
the liver says no. Okay.
And then the water element helps us be mindful and present in the moment and helps us connect with our inner wisdom and tune into divine guidance.
Wow.
So it's all like, we need all of those things to be healthy and happy. And when one of them goes out of whack, whether, we're just disorganized and just can't keep our schedule straight, or, we're just not having enough fun and play in our lives, we'll begin to just be unhappy, even if we have everything we think we want.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where this fits in exactly, but I like to take a nap. I take one a couple of times a week, like just whatever time, if I wake up and I just feel like I woke up in the wrong part of the day, I'll close my eyes for 10, 20 minutes and I'll be great for the rest of the day. Because I lived a lot in Europe, I do believe that there is a tremendous value to that siesta kind of mentality.
Oh my gosh.
It's something that we really have ignored in this country. But all, in Europe, it's quite interesting. I read a book in praise of slowness. And, and one of the things they were talking about was in Spain, they're used to taking their siesta. Well, now when I lived there, people would work from, 9:00 in the morning until they stopped for lunch, which was, really their dinner. It was their biggest meal of the day, usually around 1:00. And then they would stay home and sleep for a few hours and go back to work from like 5 to 8, which, none of the rest of the world does. So then, over time, they've been trying to conform to this more 8-hour workday that's more truncated. But what they ended up doing is opening a bunch of sleep centers around town so people could just take a nap after work. After lunch, they would have lunch, at a restaurant or something and then just go to like a little cubicle somewhere and sleep for an hour and then go back to work, or half an hour, whatever they could muster up.
Oh my goodness, I know. And that exactly what you're talking about is nurturing our water element, which needs quiet. It needs naps. It needs rest. It needs, just doing nothing, because we're actually not doing nothing when we're doing nothing.
Yes.
When we're doing nothing, all our subconscious is working. We're solving problems. We're, nurturing our body so we can stay balanced and have energy and not go into adrenal fatigue. And it's so important because like our American culture is so wood. It's all action and doing and 8 hours. And I recently read an article about a company where they created a 5-hour workday.
Ooh. And sign me up.
I know, right? And these employees were allowed to leave around like 4:30 or so, 4:30 to go do the family stuff, to pick their kids up and go to the soccer games and do whatever. And they found that productivity actually increased.
Yeah.
And the company's profits increased.
There you go.
And it's that law of diminishing returns. Like when we honor those rhythms and cycles in our bodies on a day-to-day basis, and we take the nap when we need it, and we, maybe work later that night because we're feeling it at 5:00 or 8:00 or whatever. Yeah. But when we sort of honor those natural rhythms, boy, it's amazing what we can accomplish in flow, where it just flows.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And one of the things I worked for a French company. I lived in France for a while, and I even watch my French friends now. And when they work. Like here, I think we end up because we're in a bit of a stupor much of the time, right? No, seriously, like we're kind of just going through the motions and nobody wants to be there and you're, distracted because your mom called and she needs you and, you got to pick up your kid. Like I was supposed to have somebody come and install my dishwasher today. The poor guy's kid got sick, so he had to stay home. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I get it, take care of your family. But people are, they're at work and they're just distracted by everything. That's like they're just spending so much time there that they can't really focus down for more than maybe 10 to 20 minutes at a time because they're trying to, cram in all this extra work. But yeah, I think there's a lot of value to that in having an alert worker.
And we need to move more, that's part of it too, is like, if you have a desk job where you're sitting down, we need to create a culture that is like after by the 90-minute mark, you need to get up and move. You need to, when you exercise or just get your heart going, go play ping pong, go walk around the complex, you get all this blood flow to your brain. And when you have all that blood flow to your brain, you're going to think more clearly. You're going to, be more efficient in the work that you're doing. And, it's a fantastic to really encourage that. And where I live is in Morgan Hill, we have specialized bicycles. And around noon every day, you see this giant, group of cyclists, and they encourage their employees to get out and cycle at lunchtime. And, it's like, I just love that culture, that idea of like, you're expected to get out and move and exercise because that's part of what makes you productive and energized and like excited about your work.
And I think also during that downtime, you have those epiphanies, you have that creative flow that wouldn't happen if you were just sitting there, even though the intent is to focus on the work, your mind starts wandering because, we've got the monkey mind, right? Just kind of jumping around. Yes. Right. Yeah. So when you're not supposed to be there, that's when all your little aha moments come up and it's like, oh, I could do that so much faster this way.
Right. Yes.
Right. So, we actually have, if you have time, we have some questions from our audience. It seems like our audience is from Australia because I'm going to have to translate all of this into American. There's just a few, a whilst and a celiac with an O in it. So, the first question is, how would you recommend as a parent we help our children to be open to trying acupuncture?
Yes. Well, I think one of the things that I do is I tell people that, an acupuncturist is like a detective, and they're going to talk to you and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And we're going to try different things to figure out what's causing the health problem that you're having. And then, the actual, acupuncture part of it, we have all these special spots on our body that help our body heal itself. And the acupuncturist is going to tap into that with her special tools, his or her special tools. And it's something that they'll do in conjunction with you. You guys are going to be partner and you're going to be a team, and they're going to help you and you're going to work together. So there's nothing to be afraid of or nothing to worry about.
Right. Okay, great. Let's see. The question 2, I think we actually covered this to some extent, but you talk about how you came into your field through the need to help your son with his eczema. What other significant health changes have you experienced through the journey that have had a great impact on children?
For me, I think we touched upon this with really helping kids in their immune systems and their, overcoming, understanding and then overcoming issues with food and food triggers that are underlying cause of the problem. So what I see most often is this shift from unwellness and just lack of vitality and tiredness to a shift towards optimal health and vitality just through changes to diet and stimulating the body to heal itself with the acupuncture points. So that's been most impressive for me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just kind of running through these quickly. And like I said, I'm translating from the Australian. we say things just a little bit differently. So what guides do you give to parents who are unsure, especially when facing modern medicine being too quick to give out drugs and creams rather than trying natural medicines, how do you recommend parents handle or determine what is the best method and treatment for their child?
That's an excellent question. And I think, first of all, we have to decide what, if it's an emergency, if we're in an emergency situation, we really have to look at what is the best thing in that situation, which is entirely different than the way we would approach it if it was, say, a chronic condition. So if it's a chronic condition, I always say, I believe in Western and Eastern medicine. It's just trying to figure out which one is the right one for the job.
Right. So
we go to the doctor, we get the blood work, we, go and look at everything. And if at the end of all that, there's still not a solution, simultaneously, we can look at things from the Eastern perspective and try and figure out what's the underlying root cause and what factors in diet and lifestyle and environment are, creating or are not helping the situation. And that way we don't really, it's not an either or situation. It's more like, we can do Eastern and Western at the same time. Right. And, sometimes it's about trying things out, with my son, I went through a period where I was like, all right, I'm just going to try the Western medicine and see what happens.
Right.
And I tried the creams and I tried the baths with chlorine and he got a little better. And then one day it just blew up and his eczema got really bad for we don't know what it was that triggered it. Maybe an exposure to an allergen or something that he hadn't had during the time. And I was like, this is just covering the symptoms. And then after that, I just chose not to do it because it wasn't really helping. And so we just have to look at what is helping and what might possibly do more harm in the long run.
Right, right. Yeah, I love the fact that you say that you honor both East and Western medicine, which is the same thing that I heard from Ken Moorhead. And it was, to paraphrase the way I'm going to recall what he said is that Western medicine often doesn't want to entertain alternatives. Because, we, not even so much Western medicine as much as the United States. We don't want to entertain that Eastern medicine or, homeopathy, anything that hasn't been discovered here can help. Whereas the other modalities are very inclusive in saying, oh, this is another place where we can go.
Right.
With it.
Right.
And, I actually saw over the weekend, I watched a documentary on, the Reformation. And it was really interesting because and you'll understand in a moment why this applies. But, because what they were saying was, I think, described so much the mentality that essentially founded this country. And like why it exists. And when they talked about Martin Luther posting the 95 Theses on the church door, and how, it became the Roman Catholic Church was just like, well, what do you want to do? You want to break off? It was this very pivotal moment where it was like, you're either with us or against us, essentially. Mm-hmm. And one of these scholars said that he had a rabbi come and said, talking to the congregation, say, how come you guys can't just agree with each other? How come, like, every time you have a disagreement, you have to come up with a new religion? She's like, we Jews argue way more than you guys do, but we can all sit down and have a meal together and still be Jews. And so where I'm going with this is that, the mentality, why is our mentality not both and instead of either or?
Ooh, that sounds like a topic for an entire episode.
Exactly. But you really think about it everywhere in our country, we take this stance, you're against this thing. So it's got to be something else. We can't find middle ground. And to take this even further, one of the things that they discussed was, Queen Elizabeth I. Because, her dad was Henry VIII, who converted to this, head of Church of England. to basically get away from his wife. He wanted to divorce her, had no out than to become a Protestant. And, but her sister, who was the daughter of the Catholic Queen, she murdered every Protestant she could get her hands on. So pretty much, she's not called Bloody Mary for nothing. So when Elizabeth takes over, she has this inclusive idea where she's like, well, we're going to take this good stuff from Catholicism and we're going to take this good stuff from the Protestant Reformation and we're going to put it together, and I'm not going to kill you because you're a Catholic and I'm not going to kill you because you're a Protestant. And it created one of the most successful reigns in British history. And it was this idea of inclusiveness. So I guess, like I'm just adding my little 2 cents here. I think there is, to underscore what you're saying, I think we can learn a lot from all methods. And, just because we choose one doesn't mean that we need to completely discount the other. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of many aspects of Western modern medicine. However, my leg gets cut off, I might want, Western doctor to reattach it. If something serious happens, I might need to take an antibiotic, and that's okay. I just have to make sure I'm going with my eyes open and work on it on the back end. So, we don't necessarily have to just be, jump into one basket and stay there. We can still honor the validity of the other side.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the misconceptions about Western medicine is that it's very scientific and very, there's a lot of evidence behind it. And there are some parts of Western medicine that are like that, where there's a lot of science and so forth. But there's still a lot of things in Western medicine that are done. There are a lot of medical reversals where we thought it was this way and whoops, it's not at all. It's the opposite, or it's something different than we thought. So doctors are the same as all practitioners. We have a certain body of knowledge and we're just trying to do our best to figure things out. And we don't always have it right. Western medicine doesn't always have it right. And so a lot of the whole entire interaction that we have, what they call a patient encounter, which is often attributed to the placebo effect, there's healing in it. And that's what I think holistic practitioners are working with patients. I think there's more consideration for the entire healing, the container for healing that we create when we're working with somebody. A lot of people, when they come in my office, they always say, oh, I already feel better. I've arrived and I feel better already. And that's the whole idea of like, you feel taken care of, you feel heard, you feel like your story has been fully listened to. And I feel like, when you go to a conventional physician, whether it's their choice or not, due to the demands on them, they don't have time to create that container for healing. They just need to make a diagnosis and get you what you need, your pill, your prescription, or whatnot. And for many of doctors, that's not satisfying for them either.
Right.
And so it becomes a part of a belief system, either, and unfortunately, I think there are people that don't believe in Western medicine, which they're going to be missing out on the many things that it can do to save your life. And equally, people don't believe in Eastern medicine or nutrition or holistic medicine or whatever it might be. And they're going to miss out when they have some kind of functional illness and there's no pill that can cure them.
Right.
And so we really need to come back to that. Like, I love that all inclusive. It's when we can look at, both medicines have their place. Both medicines have something of value to offer a person. And when we pick the right one, when we combine it in the right way, then we can achieve true, deeper healing. Even if we can't be cured, we can be healed to a point that we can go about and live our lives and be happy and participate and be there for our families and our grandchildren and all of that. So I really would hope we could create a belief system around medicine in this country that's more inclusive.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing that I will say, and I don't know if you see the same thing, because you mentioned science in Western medicine. And to me, I think for me, it can fall short. Doesn't always, but it can fall short. As far as Western medicine goes, is that we've gotten to a point in more recent years where many of the like you talked about the things that, we had to reverse. They're relying so heavily on studies rather than experience. So when the doctors experience trialing the results of a study, the way it was reported at least, or, doesn't happen, they blame the patient.
Right.
Have you seen this too? I mean, like, I think this is something that bears, acknowledging. And for me, like, I want to know the epidemiological, I want to see the on the ground, that this happened. Yeah. Not these kind of sterile, reportings of like, we tried, we made these 5 changes and this is the result. So only this is the one change that you need to make that happen. It's like, wait, but you changed 5 things. How do we know which of the 5 it was? You just chose one of the, they do this a lot with, again, denigrating different foods. They'll say like, oh, well, red meat causes all of these health problems. And, but then, when you look at the study, you're like, well, it wasn't just red meat in that group. It was actually the anything goes group, or it was right. red meat and deli meat, or red meat, deli meat and fake meat, or some permutation of that. And it's like, well, how did you decide that red meat was the bad thing here? Because you put all this other stuff in there.
Yes. Well, and that really goes, I think, to the media and the way that they will report studies, kind of making sweeping conclusions in a headline that can mislead somebody or not be, factual, or, there wasn't a control group in the study. There were 2 cohorts, or,
right.
There's all kinds of ways we can finagle science. And I say that with air quotes. Yeah. To make it be what we want it to be, and unfortunately science can create more havoc, create more problems when it's really not properly administered. And unfortunately, in certain areas, I think in particular with vaccines, there's a lot of skewing of data and information, and it just becomes so muddy. The waters become so muddied, it's not clear to anybody what the truth really is.
Right. But I got to say that, I do agree that the media plays a huge role in this, because they're no longer objective about their reporting. But the other thing is, I've actually seen the summary, because a lot of times people just take the summary and that's what they go with.
Right.
And the summary does not necessarily reflect what's in that actual study. Like, I've seen many studies where I look at the summary and I'm like, okay, let me read the study. And I read the study. I'm like, there's nothing that points to this conclusion. Right. There is nothing that points to the conclusion that they're drawing. But most people either don't have access, because, when you go on WebMD or wherever they post these darn things, they only show you the abstract and the summary. They don't show you the actual study. But if you have access to it and you read it and you understand it, you're going, not necessarily the conclusion that, and then if you could take that further. If you know about statistics, how to determine, what's statistically significant and so on, you're like, that's like negligible, if that, and you screwed it up by, adding all these other factors in there, and, people living in different climates and all these other things that can skew that data. Right.
And ultimately what we want is to, create a unique plan for the people that we're working with. Everybody needs unique. What, worked in that study isn't always going to work for everyone.
Right. That's an excellent point. Excellent.
And that's where the one size fits all approach just really falls short for so many people, because you're not a statistic.
Right. And it's kind of funny. It's like, everybody's willing to say that until it comes down to the point where they're like, I just want my pain medication. Just give it to me. I don't care. Okay. I have, another question, which is, my son was recently diagnosed as having the celiac disease gene, while he doesn't have the disease. I've been advised that should signs appear, then to get him rechecked. I find this very reactive and not proactive. What would you recommend I do?
My experience with gluten and it being such a difficult protein to digest and such an issue for so many kids, if you had the genes, I would just take it out of the diet. I would really just avoid it in general, rather than wait for symptoms, wait for damage to happen. Because by the time a person becomes symptomatic, they're already doing damage to the small intestine. And, hopefully that it would repair, but maybe not. So I think it would be so much better to just avoid it. And there's so many great alternatives out there today in place of gluten that I think it's fairly easy to do these days.
Yeah, I think where it becomes the problem is in social circles.
Yes.
When you want to, your kid wants to go to a birthday party, or you're at a family event, or, and then unfortunately there's so many kind of gluten imposters, gluten intolerant imposters, I should say. People who kind of want to be part of that club, but as soon as you turn your back, they're sucking down a bowl of pasta and you're like, wait, you just made me rearrange my entire Thanksgiving dinner and you're eating pasta, like regular old wheat pasta. Yeah. What I'm wondering is why she would have had him tested for the gene without any symptoms already. What was the impetus behind that? So I'm thinking there's something already going on.
Yeah.
Why he was checked in the first place. No.
Even if siblings have had something going on, I think it's best to just avoid gluten because, you might be fine for a while, but if the perfect storm happens, you get really sick, a big, fever, toxic exposure, stress, loss, whatever it might be, that perfect storm can sometimes trigger the symptoms to start. And then if you're already eating that food, it can just escalate quite quickly.
Yikes. Yeah. So sorry to sound reactive rather than proactive, but I think that is a proactive approach actually to address it now rather than waiting for disease. Nobody wants disease.
Right. And, the birthday parties and the family dinners and eventually, what I recommend to the parents that I work with is you just need to really look at your calendar, look at what's happening at school, look at what birthday parties. And, I used to, when my kids were off of gluten and dairy, I would make cupcakes up in advance and then I would defrost them. I would take them with me. I would take my own little pizzas that I would make with, the stuff that they could have. Yeah. I mean, I just created it as normal as I could for my kids. And eventually we didn't have to do it anymore.
Right. And especially when they're little, if I'm a big fan of distracting kids. So, not making them feel like, oh, are you feeling left out because they're all eating cake and you're not? No, just go, oh, let's play pin. They're doing something over there. Let's go play pin the tail on the donkey.
Exactly. Do something fun. Exactly. I love that. Distraction is wonderful. And we don't want to, if we walk around as adults going, oh, you poor thing, you didn't have your pizza and ice cream and cake. Oh, you must feel so bad. Of course they're going to, but if we can empower them. And I've worked with kids. I have one little 5-year-old boy that he is like, I don't eat that because that makes my eczema bad. So he just doesn't eat it. He has this amazing willpower and he doesn't care because he doesn't want to itch and feel bad. So, we can take a page out of his book and just be really, he owns it. He's like, I don't eat that stuff.
Yeah, kids, and I'd like to think that we all think our kids are smart, they can deal with it a lot better than we might think. Mm-hmm. So, don't, think that they're too immature to handle it. They're actually probably less attached to certain things than you might think. Mm-hmm. So, Robin Ray Green, you're going to have to go. I'm going to have to go. Thank you so much, for being on the show today, everybody. Her name is Robin Ray Green. That's RobinRaygreen.com. You can go to our website and get links to her free acupressure guide for babies and kids, which I downloaded and it's awesome. And it's really just a good overall, how would you describe it? I think of it as like a good overall stimulation of the immune system to do its job.
Exactly. Every, all those parents whose kids are in preschool or they're in elementary school and they're coming home with the colds. This is like the easiest, most enjoyable thing you can do to boost your child's immune system without having to change a thing for them. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quick. So, and it's together time, we all want to spend more time with our kids and it helps to kind of foster that relationship. So, you can do, it doesn't even take 5, depending on how old they are, it's like 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. It's like 5 minutes or less.
Yeah.
And your kids will love it so much. Oftentimes, I have parents that tell me all the time that their kids ask for their special massage time. So it really is a great, great thing to do for your child.
Well, I'm going to start doing it to my 13-year-old just because it'll freak her out. She'll be like, "What are you doing?" But no, it is fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show, and please keep us in tune with what's going on. Again, her book is Heal Your Child from the Inside Out: The 5-Element Way to Nurturing Healthy, Happy Kids. Thank you, Robin Ray Green.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Alrighty. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Nutrition Heretic podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nicola Popovich. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean. And our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrienne Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/nutritionheretic and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.